Колеги, ми продовжуємо.
Dear colleagues, we continue our working day, and the next topic is the dignity march through the prism of human rights, so whose rights are violated, equality march. Valeryia Rybak, public monitoring group of Ozon, Ksenyia Prokonova, victims advocate, and Ruslana Panuhnyk, who is one of the organizers of the equality march, and also a victim. I represent Ozon Group. I am Valeryia Rybak, and we'll talk about the freedom for peaceful gatherings in Ukraine. We, as an independent site, as monitors, we go to peaceful assemblies and monitor how they behave, both those who assemble and the police and others, where the people can say what they are dissatisfied with or voice their position. On the 6th of June this year, we gathered to monitor the Equality March, which is a human rights event. You know, when I was lecturing at our police school with our future patrol servicemen, and we were considering the case what to do if there's, for instance, such an equality march, and which is aimed at counteracting discrimination of LGBT in community. I was looking into their eyes, and later I understood that three components are not understood there. First, human rights, then LGBT community, and the protection as the actions of police. So this is the situation in our society when we don't know what to do, how to protect our rights, and what we can demand and request from our police. So how it happened, the participants in the assembly will tell you today, but I would like to draw your attention to the fact that today we also invited representatives of the Ministry of Interior. We wanted to show a more objective side, but they didn't come. And we wanted to talk about how the situation is about peaceful gatherings, and there is a continuous process, as there could be some consultations, there could be drawing up some security plan. However, this time we did not see the proper interaction of the participants and the police. It is very good that the police were there and they tried to protect the freedom of peaceful gathering, and I hope that such a huge number of the police prevented further complications, although there were some people who suffered as a result of clashes, but then this says that not everything was done. Regrettably, there are two sorts of people who suffered: participants in the march and the police. And the participants in the march, for instance, gathered money to help the wounded policemen. And there's an important issue, the court hearings, as almost 30 people were detained, and 7 of them were already heard in court, and we will monitor how those court hearings happen, as our organization Ozon also monitors how our rights are being observed during court hearings. Ksenyia Prokonova, as a lawyer, will tell you more which articles are being used, but we see that they use only Article 06, which is hooliganism, but we also should take into account the character of these crimes, as we know that these are hate crimes. Also, there were attacks at law enforcers, but I didn't hear about any court hearings about this. So we prepared this report, which we hand over to the police and to the participants so that they could see how the assembly went in pictures and images, what were the actions of the police and what our recommendations are. We will, of course, voice our recommendations both to the police and to local authorities as they take part in this. For instance, when they are being filed a note of the gathering of the assembly and how then the Kyiv city administration should treat this notice. So I will talk about recommendations by the end of our briefing, and now I invite you to see how it happened, and Ruslana Panuhnyk, one of the organizers of the Equality March, will tell you about how it happened. Good morning. I do agree with Valeryia about the fact that a peaceful assembly, including the realization of the right to peaceful assembly by LGBT community, is one of the fundamental human rights where the state has to play one of the major roles, because human rights protection is about relations between a person and a state. Maybe if I were telling you everything about what was happening before and during the march would take too much time, but I just want to stress that I do have hope, and the organizing committee of the Equality March and other stakeholders and participants will do everything possible in order to reach consensus and a well-running mechanism in our relations with the Kyiv city administration and the police as far as it concerns the right of people to peaceful assemblies, including Gay Pride or Equality March as one of the examples of this. We, as a LGBT community and the organizing committee of Kyiv Pride, will not abandon our right to peaceful assembly, and we will continue, and we will hold the Equality March next year and in 2017 and 18 and so on. So it is very important for me to stress now that this is not a one-off process, that we sort of gathered and they said, yes, we'll come and provide for your security at a peaceful gathering. But this is a process that has to go on for a year, running a process of consultation and reaching understanding between the participants and the Kyiv city administration. This year, the communication between police and Kyiv city administration was practically not there. The notice that was filed on the 5th of May arrived to police on the 28th of May, after I came to them and brought it personally, which delayed us for a month with our analysis and with working out a security plan to provide for security and safety of the participants of the march. I regret very much that it's very sad that there are no representatives of the police or the Ministry of Interior, because I do hope for a constructive dialogue with the authorities, and I do hope that we will arrive at mutual understanding, and the state will recognize the fundamental human right, the right to peaceful assembly, where they have to provide for the safety of participants, and they will do it properly in consultation with the organizers during our next years. So who's the next, colleagues? Ksenia? I'll try. I'll try to improve my conditions. I'm Ksenyia Prokonova. I am a lawyer who defends those who suffered during the Equality March. During the Equality March, there were cases of violence. As far as law enforcers are concerned, I do not represent them and I do not know about any specifics. As far as attacks are concerned, of course, I want to tell you that the attacks during the march cannot be qualified according to Article 296 only hooliganism. These are not just attacks on the street to, for instance, snatch your mobile phone or whatever. These attacks were clearly of definite nature. They were aimed against a certain part of people who openly proclaim their solidarity with the members of the march or are participants in the march or are voicing ideas that are not liked but by our right-wing groupings mostly. The right sector and Svoboda party, who have assumed responsibility for these attacks, have now heightened the interest to genitalia zone of everybody who are not right sector. As far as correct qualification, today we have several statements about crime to the Obolon precinct, and we want to requalify this to Article 291, which tells us about the violation of equality of people according to some characteristics. And the attacks that happened during the march really have as their aim to draw attention of the public. And this is not just an attack on different people, but a signal transmitted to the society that such marches are inadmissible. They will be fought against in such a violent way. As of today, we have gathered certain testimony and evidence, photos of those who attacked, because there was a lot of photos, interrogation of witnesses, and also testimony of those who suffered, forensic and medical tests. However, we still have grounds to believe that several MPs from Svoboda party play quite a role there. For instance, Yuri Noevy and one of those who suffered, Mykola Starkov, said that this man hit him, and he seemed to play the role of the organizer, which we will try to prove. He wasn't interrogated yet. We think that this is inadmissible, and we should inform the society about this. And of course, tolerance has some boundaries, and we have to draw conclusions about this march as far as security and possible rebuff to such attacking groups is concerned.
And now, Zachar Popovich, one of the victims. Zachar Popovich. I am the Deputy Director of the Center of Social Labor Research, a member of the Committee of a New Political Party. I was attacked and my friends were attacked during the March of Equality, and we failed to get to the territory where the march was going on because of militia, and because of that we were in the zone where ultra-red could easily get us. They were following us and they organized as a group, they attacked us. They participated, and also those who participated were the deputies of the city council, the deputy head of the regional council. So he hit Mykola, who's had to then go and treat his wound of the lip at the hospital. I hope that the organizers will be taken to responsibility, but the systemic issue is that's not a single attack like that. We need to understand that organized criminal groupings of ultra-right are now systemically exercising terror to their political opponents and to all those who are for the equality of people, for human rights, and those who dare to have some doubts about their nationalistic, but that's in the sense of racists, behavior and ideology. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it is done openly. If you read the websites of these parties attentively, and if one of you has ever attended these meetings of Svoboda, right sector, of all these groupings, you will see how they are talking about the cult of violence. At each meeting, they explain to young guys that you have to resolve the issues by violence. You have to beat your political opponents. That is what they talk at all their meetings, and this is no secret. This is just the secret for a white liberal community who believe that they are something important for building up the state. I would like to give some examples. We have identified people who committed these things. On the 13th of November 2013, myself with my friends from the center, we were presenting a book of translation of Trotsky's articles in bookstore here, and the same people who were attacking us at the gay pride, they almost were ready to beat the foreign guests and the guests from the Academy of Sciences. They cut the tires on my car. I could not go anywhere, and I went to Milish on the 5th of December 2013. Miroshnichenko, the MP from Svoboda, organized a group beating of activists of the Confederation of Free Trade Unions who were disseminating the leaflets. 17th of April 2014, another leftist activist, Denis Spilash, was beaten, and he's now defending his thesis at the Kiev Institute of International Relations. In September 2014, when the head of the Center of Visual Culture was beaten, and the only person who was recognized as a participant and organizer of this beating, because the person then spent several weeks at the hospital, that is a person who's also an activist of ultra-red party. Maybe Vitaly Dudin wanted to say something. On the 31st of March of 2015, attack on Vitaly Dudin, the lawyer of the trade union protection of labor. 6th of June, the attack at us. These are the attacks which were committed because of political hatred, and that was against political opponents who were expressing publicly the criticism against these people. And I would like to draw your attention that the problem of the human rights, of the possibility to have free meetings that concerns all of us, that's not the problem of one group of people. These are the problems where at which we all need to draw attention. When there's the march of equality, then we need to be together. When the political opponents are beaten and killed, that is what can ruin our state. Thank you. Continuing this issue, that it is about all of us. The freedom of peaceful meetings is something that concerns all of us. Whether we want to defend, when we want to defend any rights, we need to go out into the street and talk about that. The militia and the local authorities are to help us in that. That's about relations between citizens and the state. So, quoting our recommendations, I would like to say, we can state that the citizens of Ukraine and other people who came here, they managed to exercise their right for peaceful meeting, but in the future we need to establish more cooperation between local authorities and law enforcement bodies. As Ruslana quoted, a month passed after the notification was made and local authorities failed to submit it to militia, even though they understood the risks. And even at the meeting, it wasn't about how to organize some security measures. It was about maybe using this slogan or that slogan. The militia was saying, if you go to the equality march, then they will give you the enrollment papers for ATO. Next, to accompany every event like that by a representative of the authorities who would be responsible for mediation. We as observers, when we were there, we were trying to find out whether there is a person from militia who could explain where are the places where the participants can, which the participants can live, but they were saying, okay, go to Vladimirskaya 15, but we need to know where the ambulance is and so on. We could not find it out. And also, in case of the possible danger, we need to develop the plan for security measures. And during the equality march, the militia informed about the place where they will be able to ensure the protection of the public order. And the participants had less than 24 hours to get ready, to understand where they will be, how to leave this place, because there was a danger. Militia hasn't worked on that, and when the participants were leaving this place of meeting, the militia was saying, do it in small groups, but that wasn't like, they were not following them up to some safe places. And also, not all the participants, not all law enforcers were with the insignia. We know that the situation in the country is difficult. There is ATO taking place. Many people are in uniforms. Who's responsible for what? We do not know. At this meeting, there were also representatives of the interior forces and some camouflage uniforms. Can we go to them to request for assistance? We don't know. More than that, militia wasn't everywhere where there was possible danger. We knew that was happening at in a Bologna, where there was no militia. When there were attacks, there was no militia. Our observers were calling, our monitors were calling militia to inform that there is an attack on the participants. Also, we need to conduct a very detailed investigation of all these cases so that these crimes are qualified and investigated, because you've seen many photographs, you can see faces, you can see people who were committing these violations. Unfortunately, 30 persons were detained, and only the preventive measures were selected only against 7. Also, there was a photograph of the county meeting, the so-called county meeting, and there were slogans which could not allow us to understand what was the message of this meeting. There was such slogan, and there should be no LGBT in power. We have nothing to eat. The participants of the meeting could not explain why they are there, why they are at this meeting. But the law enforcement bodies were ensuring the order there and were protecting the order, and there were no problems there. So I believe that militia and local authorities will take our comments into account. Now participants of the march will go to the local authorities to meet with them, will give them such a brochure. These are the documents which describe the international best practices on how the freedom of peaceful meetings is to be ensured, and the main principles that like the human rights. Thank you, Valeria. Do you have any questions to the speakers? In UCMC, I have a question to the representatives of Ozon. Back to the topic of our press briefing, whose rights were violated? The organizers wanted to have a match, and they had a match. What is the violation about, and how reasonable it was to organize the march, knowing about the situation in the country, knowing about the provocations? Maybe that march was organized in order to draw attention to this problem because of the clashes. This meeting is something that shows how militia can cooperate, whose rights were violated. The participants executed their right, but we see that there are victims, and the rights of those people who participated in the meeting were violated, the rights of every one of us. When we get to that situation, I have no guarantee that my right for peaceful meeting will be executed. I will be protected, and the civil order public order will be ensured. So one of the slogans was that human rights are always topical. If we go out with the slogan that there should be the freedom of peaceful meetings, then it should be so. People have to come back from ATO and live somehow in the country where the laws operate, but not the rules when you can beat people. Thank you, Valeria. Thank you, participants of the press briefing. We have